Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of Viva Broadcasts. Viva faculty Jean Laurenz and Juan Berrios join artistic director Buddy Deshler and special guest Velvet Brown in a conversation on how chamber music has been a vital part of their musical careers. Other topics include the importance of starting chamber music early, what benefits chamber music has on your development as a musician, and what chamber music might look like in the future. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, we are live on Facebook. Hello, Facebook. If you are watching on our Fredericksburg Brass Institute page or our Tidewater Brass Institute page, feel free to leave comments and questions below so that way we can get to them in our live broadcast of the Viva Broadcasts, the Brass Institutes of Virginia. My name is Buddy Deshler, and I am the artistic director of Viva Brass Institutes of Virginia. And this is a very, very special episode for many reasons. One, this is the first of our mini-series. This is episode 11, Chamber Chats, but the first of our mini-series of Chamber Chats. Chamber Chats, chats about chamber, music. Slogan is still in works. But today we have many, many special guests, including faculty and wonderful artists. Another quick plug, today is Kenneth Johnson's 29th birthday. Our esteemed Dr. Kenneth Johnson. It is his birthday today. So if you're friends with Kenneth, please send him a happy birthday message. If you're not friends with Kenneth, which I assume are most people, continue your day as if it was. Just kidding. But Kenneth has been a crucial part to this festival from the beginning, the very beginning. And by the very beginning, I mean senior year of high school, very beginning. Joining us today on episode 11 of Viva Broadcasts, Chamber Chats, we have our trumpet faculty and member of Seraph Brass, Miss Jean Laurenz. Say hi, Jean.
Hi, everyone.
We have horn faculty and member of Dallas Brass, Mr. Juan Berrios. Say hey, Juan.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
And our special, if not distinguished guest today, we have Velvet Brown, Distinguished Professor of Tuba and Euphonium at Penn State, artist faculty at the Peabody Conservatory, and artist for Buffet Crampon Velvet. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
So we are going to be taking some questions that we have via our Facebook, but I also wanted to just kind of kick things off is that everyone on this call is doing many, many things in music, teaching, performing, teaching privately, also teaching in higher academics, recording, conducting, lots and lots of stuff. But all of us have had careers and continue to have careers as chamber musicians. So we can start with our distinguished professor of tuba and euphonium, Velvet Brown. So what has chamber music been like in your career?
Chamber music has been really vital throughout my whole career. But first, let me say thank you for having me as part of this chat. I'm quite honored. Chamber music started for me back in junior high school in general. My junior high school band director placed us into small chamber groups. She was a marvelous trumpet player from the University of Michigan. And she played right alongside of us many times. We would go out and perform at different places. But then when I got to high school, I started to really pay attention to the musicians at the United States Naval Academy Band. I was born and raised in Annapolis, Maryland, and so there were concerts all the time for us to go to. And then there was another group that should not be forgotten in brass quintet legacy, and that's the Annapolis Brass Quintet. I was fortunate enough to be, I would say, we called ourselves groupies, and we were also called the Annapolis Junior Brass Quintet because we played lots of things, lots of clinics by the Annapolis Brass Quintet, many concerts that we a group of brass players from high school that we attended, and it was just a wonderful mentoring program by those wonderful musicians. And the bass trombonist and tuba player Robert Poston, who just passed recently, I do to thank him for just really bringing this genre of music and the excitement of the low brass, the tuba and bass trombone, which I should say that to go to college, he handed me a bass trombone to study as well and said, return it when you no longer need it. And so that was just a wonderful upbringing for me for brass quintet. From there, I went on to college, and I had the opportunity, starting in my sophomore year, I believe, I played tuba with the faculty brass quintet because my tuba teacher was there once a week, but was quite busy with other teaching and his orchestral and ballet performances. And so I had just great hands-on training that way, and there was a student brass quintet. So brass quintet has been part of what I've done forever. I went on to graduate school, and I was in the Empire Brass program, and at Boston University, where I did my master's. And so we had studio classes and concerts, and of course the Empire Brass was in residence, and again, a lot of brass quintet. Going on with there, I'm a founding member of the Boston Brass, and so I performed and played with them for I think 8 years, something like that. So onward from there, it seems like that has been a great love of mine for brass quintet. Continuing on, of course, faculty brass quintet ensembles. I've had the pleasure of playing in a brass quintet with Susan Slaughter, first the Monarch Brass, and then there was also a brass quintet called Velvet Brass that was in existence for about 3 years with Susan Slaughter and Amy Gilreath, Audrey Morrison, Julie Fish as members of that particular ensemble. Then later on, after a few years of moving to Europe and coming back and so forth and so on, Stiletto Brass was formed, and that's the brass quintet that I play in presently. So I'm not going to take too much more time.
Great. Well, now that we'd like to hear with someone with a little bit more experience in chamber music. No, I'm kidding. Velvet, that's incredible. That's so much history of brass quintet. And I think it's so great that it's something that started early, because sometimes when students go to college and they major in music, that's their first time playing in a brass quintet. And, one of the things that we'll definitely talk about is how that, really challenges, increases multiple areas of musicianship, being in a chamber group, but having it be like part of your education where, like, yes, band, yes, maybe all state auditions or regional stuff like that, but you also know chamber music from a very early age too.
Yeah.
Something that I want to spin off to Jean here is to hear a little bit about your chamber music background, but also to accentuate what Velva was talking about of being a member of a faculty brass quintet, because Jean, being at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, there's a faculty quintet there, but the other trumpet position is filled by a student. So you can talk about how that's been, from the teaching side of it too. So Jean, what about your chamber music background?
Well, yeah, I guess we can just kind of work backwards from there, since you asked about the Wisconsin Brass Quintet. There's a rich history in the Wisconsin Brass Quintet, and I feel like my chamber music experience kind of stretches backwards and forwards in terms of music, style, genre, and also trends. But the Wisconsin Brass Quintet kind of seems to be a centerpiece where it does both inside the ensemble. We get incredible composers. We get pieces by incredible composers that really are not very well known. And we also play the transcriptions or some of the stock staple brass quintet pieces. And yeah, my experience is varied, and it's all still relatively new. I joined Seraph Brass not quite 3 years ago, and Seraph, we do a lot of the transcriptions. We also commission new pieces, and we celebrate the underrepresented demographic of women in brass and in composition, but also just try to make great music and put great music out there. I was also a member of a group, an all-female group called Calliope Brass in New York, and they're doing some really awesome things. From the get-go, I was a founder with that group, and we wanted to do music and storytelling because those two pair so beautifully. And now they've commissioned a puppet, like a Sesame Street style puppet, and they're doing all of these amazing educational shows and tying storytelling into music learning, and just doing some really cool projects. And then something that I'm really interested in is sort of collaborative chamber music, because, you know, we think of string quartets and we think of piano quintets and brass quintets, and that is like the classical genre of chamber music, but also bluegrass and, you know, rock bands and folk music. It's all chamber music. Anything that can kind of fit and move around and can fit inside of a small chamber room is kind of, you know, and you're not following the conductor, that's chamber music. So I've done a bunch of, I'm currently creating a project with two percussionists and myself with multimedia art, projection art, based off of ghost stories and folk stories written and transcribed by my great uncle in Japan. And so like the visuals are just epic and incredible, and they're very multifaceted, but it's also sort of like a pseudo staged theatrical piece. And so I just say it's part chamber music, part theater, part visual art. And we're working on rolling that out, and we're also creating a film. But like, you know, it still lies under the umbrella of what chamber music means. And
absolutely.
I also did this project with Lucerne Festival called Diva Mania, and there were 6 chamber musicians and 2 dancers, and we created this theatrical show where the 6 musicians had to go through intense dance training, and we kind of used our bodies to amplify the music even more. And so I'm really interested in exploring that version of chamber music where you kind of extend past and beyond the sound, but you still are operating inside of a very small nucleus and you can be very reactive with the performers on stage, be it sonically or visually. And yeah, and you know, moving backwards, my master's degree was at Yale, and that was where I fell in love with chamber music and where I really realized my niche as a chamber musician, because in my undergrad, I was sort of an odd duck, musically speaking. I mean, maybe personally too, but musically, it was very orchestral training, and the teachers were wonderful, and they, you know, helped me be the best player I could be. But I just always felt like I didn't quite fit until I got to my master's and I started doing a lot of that stuff. And I was lucky to go to a great high school that we didn't have much chamber music. We had a lot of music, but once a year we did get together, and I kind of learned what it meant to be in a brass quintet. And I learned how incredibly difficult it is to be in charge of so many tasks all at once. I mean, if you want to develop your cognition, be a chamber musician. There's so much to do in the moment, but there's also so much to forget about in order to do your job well. So yeah, that's kind of the trajectory. And currently Seraph Brass and the Wisconsin Brass Quintet are my 2 modes of performance.
Nice. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up, you know, something in chamber music other than brass quintets, because we all have experience in that. And, you know, in the brass player idiom, we think about chamber music and it's like, okay, brass quintet. And it makes me think about, you know, when you apply to jobs, like college teaching jobs, and yes, they're looking at, you know, have you taught somewhere else? And, you know, a lot of other factors, but then it's like, okay, what kind of musician are you? Are you an orchestral musician? Oh, you have a solo career. And it's like, oh, you have a chamber career. And it's like, so talk about that. Oh yeah, I tour with this brass quintet. I'm a huge advocate of chamber music. It's like, oh, what other chamber music do you play? Well, you know, like brass quartets, and then you know, like there's trios, brass trios, of course, and then so many. But like actually having other modes of chamber music, and not even just instrumentation, but you know, like what is visually there, who you're collaborating with, because it's just like, as you said, very scientifically, of you a nucleus, a reactive nucleus of collaboration and communication. And then last but certainly not least, Juan, you've had a really early beginning to chamber music, partly because you got a job as a professional chamber musician pretty early. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just start by saying I was similar to Gene, where like in my high school there was we would have some chamber music usually around like solo and ensemble time, right? And actually for me that was like solo and ensemble time was like my favorite part of the school year, because that was the time that I actually got a chance to go be my own musician and make my own choices. Even when I was younger, I knew I wanted a career in music, and I knew I wanted to be an educator. And I loved playing the horn, but at the time I was really leaning more towards being a director and stuff like that. So I just wanted my shot to like make my own calls and address the own issues in the ensemble. And so even in high school, when I was a freshman in high school, there were a handful of the older kids that, you know, every young kid comes in and looks up to. So I felt lucky that when solo and ensemble time came around, one of the trumpet seniors who, you know, he was like, you know, I looked up to him greatly, and he's a dear friend, but he's like, hey man, we're going to put together this brass quartet. I want you to play horn on it. And I'm like, yes. So I got to play with the older kids, and that was really great. And so the same thing happened in college. When I got to college as a freshman, the trumpet professor at the University of Central Florida at the time came up to me and was like, hey, I got this brass quintet. Do you want to play in it? And at the time I said, I just wanted to play in everything. So I was like, yes, I will play in the brass quintet. So I show up to the first rehearsal, and again, I'm like the youngest kid by a few years. So I'm sitting in a room with a handful of older players that are awesome, right? So I'm getting my feet wet with like the best kinds of influences. But then each year after that, it was like, well, all the old kids go, and then we have a brand new group. But it at least allowed me to feel like I could really thrive and keep growing. So then I'm nearing the end of my bachelor's degree, and I got a shot. I basically got asked if I would be interested in auditioning for the Dallas Brass, which is a professional group now. So I'm just like, I mean, yeah, sure, I'll audition. This will be really fun. It'll be a great story to tell somebody someday. And after all of that, they offered me the job. So I took it because I figured, you know, I'm in college now. I'm 21. If I pass on this now, somebody else is going to get the opportunity, and they won't let it go. So I don't know if it'll be there later. So, you know, with the help of my teachers and mentors, I made the call to finish a bachelor's in performance degree, and not my music ed degree that I was still trying to do, but I needed to like student teach and do the whole thing, and go on the road with Dallas Brass. Now, I always loved chamber music just because it was, like I said, it was like my time with some of my best music friends in school to make our own musical decisions and everything like that. And in college, it gave us a chance to go out and perform around campus and different things and get some gigs here and there. But I never thought I would work in one. Like, I never thought I would have a chamber music career. I didn't even know I didn't really think about a playing career at all, other than like, I want to be good enough to freelance here and there and play as an extra or whatever. But it's not anything I pursued. So it's sort of, these opportunities always happen to present themselves to me, and I just feel lucky that it was something that I had so much fun doing that I wanted to keep doing it. And with Dallas Brass, it's even more special because the heavy involvement in education of Dallas Brass coincides with the music ed part of me that's been the main driving force behind like my pursuit of this career, but also the more or less commercial nature of the group, gravitating towards more popular styles or commercial styles, jazz and funk and this and that, but also maintaining some of the classically oriented music was perfect, because I used to play trumpet in the jazz band in middle school and high school. There was a year in the 8th grade, I was the drum set player for the big band. Like, I just like playing all kinds of styles. And as a French horn player, wasn't always the thing that I was just able to do with my instrument. So I had to go elsewhere. But in Dallas Brass, I did get to do that. And so that was really great. Moreover, I should mention regarding chamber music, I feel super lucky that Dallas Brass had flexibility when we were off the road for me to pursue other areas. And as a French horn player, I also get to double dip into the woodwind quintet realm and the woodwind chamber music realm. So some of my most memorable experiences with that have been in summer festivals like the Aspen Music Festival and the Music Academy of the West, where I got to play some winds chamber music. And it's been, I've been doing that for the last, I've been in Dallas Brass the last 10 years, and it really doesn't feel like that long. It just feels like,
You haven't aged
it just feels regular at this point, and it's really awesome. So that's kind of my chamber music, and I'm one of those weirdos. Like, I'll play anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not that picky.
Right.
So,
well, I think it's so fascinating that, and I want to steer the conversation this way, is like you talked about a couple of chamber music experiences that, like, okay, so now I'm getting used to it. Okay, I'm playing with these older players and I get asked to do this, do some standard repertoire, Ewald and, brass grooves, the traditional stuff. And then, but also it's kind of like, you go into a professional chamber music career, and all of us know this, that like when you're doing a professional performing brass quintet or a professional chamber group, that's not walk on stage, clap, clap, clap. Ewald. And then you play. Like there's so many other like facets of performing. There's movement, there's stuff from memory, there's playing for a wide range of audiences. Both ages and then also like genres that you're trying to cover, because you're trying to appeal to everybody and like have something for everyone. So maybe Velvet, you could start by talking about some of the stuff that you did with all of your groups, because I know like you had to have a variety of repertoire and everything. And I actually remember a solo feature that I think you did at NTC years ago that Stiletto played, when Stiletto Brass Quintet played. But yeah, like how you've kind of, as the tuba player and, leader in a lot of these groups, like found repertoire and like what it means to not just sit down and play traditional music.
Definitely not just thinking of sitting down and playing the same things over and over again. I mean, I'm just gonna flatter myself and say the middle of my career, and just always looking for interesting ways of expressing myself and enlightening audiences, educating youngsters. There are a couple of I failed to mention earlier. There was a group that I played in New England. During the school year, we were called the New England Brass Quintet, and we were on the New Hampshire Arts touring roster. And in the summers, we became the Barbecue Brass. And that particular group also had percussion, and we put on summer shows as a brass quintet. It wasn't sitting down and playing Ewald, and we played, and I was also an arranger for the ensemble. My undergraduate degree also encompasses being a theory composition major, and so I compose and arrange as well. But did a lot more arranging back then, and we would play pop things and just have the brass quintet plus percussion, and sometimes there were two percussionists because the two percussionists were our percussionist was married to another percussionist, so I should say it that way. And so we would have a complete 4th of July program. But what we mainly did, we played in almost every town center or gazebo in New England. And for for everyone that's familiar with the town centers, it's just picturesque, and every gazebo in New Hampshire or Vermont and so forth. I was playing there, but it was wonderful we would veer into different things. For instance, spinning wheel. I also played bass guitar at the time, so I put my tuba down and play bass guitar. We had, minor costume changes, but it was a really fun show. We were busy every day from Memorial Day until Labor Day. I think I had probably 2 days off. We were just that busy, and it was wonderful to have that experience. Other ways of not just playing traditional music. There was a huge project that I did and commissioned pieces for tuba and percussion, and full percussion orchestra or tuba with just a couple of pieces, and that I recorded that complete project of pieces that I commissioned or were written for me a few years back. Probably 10 years ago, I guess. And that was something. And what I do now in my chamber music experience, I have a group that's called Moja Tuba. And Moja is a style of dance, and that's Mojah. That was developed by the dancer and her mother. Kikor Franklin is the dancer, and her mother is a famous dancer and teacher in the Atlanta area. Moja is for modern, O original, J jazz, A African, and H hip hop. That's a form of dance that they have that's now a standard dance form. I've dropped the H because I said I'm not sure how to play hip hop tuba, but so we have this program where I'm playing all the time. So it's me, and then I have percussion between 1 and 3 dancers, and a pianist that also sings, and it's a wonderful program, very uplifting and moving, it's one of my favorite ensembles because there is so much freedom. Nothing else exists like it. So the sky's the limit for what we're doing, and we've also added a little bit of visual arts and projection to the program as well. So those are some of the things. But as a teacher of chamber music, which I have coordinated brass chamber music programs at the different universities where I've taught, I strongly encourage students to create groups. I strongly encourage, I'm now mentoring another group, and I'm strongly encouraging them to find their own voice in how they want to express themselves. Many are brass players, but the sky is the limit. Look for the other talents that you have within each person. I wouldn't quite say that I was a talented bass guitar player, but it worked for boom, 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 boom. I could do that on a professional level. And then of course some people sing and so forth, but you've got to find your own voice, because let's remember the brass quintet genre was only developed in the 50s, correct? That's not in 1950s, not so long ago. So someone can come up with a standard ensemble today, and that becomes, as I said, it would become a standard. So think forward for everyone that is wishing to play. If your best friend's a cellist or viola, that could be a standard, horn, viola, cello could be a standard chamber music that people will start writing for all the time. So you never know what can happen.
Yeah, it's kind of a blessing in disguise to be an ensemble that's born out of creativity. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it is great that composers are writing for brass quintet, a lot more now because it is, as you say, kind of standardized and becoming more and more traditional. But the fact that most of our repertoire are arrangements and are sort of modifications and adaptations of music that people like hearing, and like, music that like they hear on the radio, or of a particular style, like a later genre, not just, yes, string quartets are doing crazy things, and you look at, like Time for Three and Project Trio and like a lot of other groups that have strings in it. So yeah, sky's the limit for sure. But yeah, just born where you have to have new repertoire and you have to have arrangements. And yeah, I just love, like, because of that, if that's creative, if our music is creative, why not our performance venue be creative? Why not our, talking be creative? Why not our like showmanship or, and like, the things we do on stage be that way? So, because of that, and especially when you're entertaining, and I also love when you're talking about like playing like, at gazebos and like marketplaces and stuff, because then you're just performing for people. Just straight up performing for people, rather than like a very traditional, like, you sit here, that's your seat. Excuse me, I think you're in my seat. Is this K letter? No. Oh, sorry. Right. And then like you get to actually play for people, and everything. Yeah. So, because of that and many reasons, and maybe we can hear from Jean and Juan, what are some of the other things that you love about chamber music that you don't get in other performance settings? And maybe like the chamber music specifically that you do.
Well, I feel like, especially Velvet, hearing you talk, I'm realizing that we're all just professional dabblers. We just dabble in a lot of things, and I think one area where I feel like chamber has helped me as an artist who stays interested and invested is in the connection that you receive from your audience is, because it's harder for brass players who sit in the back of an orchestra. I mean, I can only speak for myself. It was harder for me to feel that audience connection, and if you're doing a kids show, and if you ask the kids, if you're playing as a brass player and you ask the kids to wave their hands high, if you play something loud and put their hands low, you get this immediate reaction. And then there's this like chemistry that informs your playing. And to me, the give and take is like a constant game of artistic tennis. And I love that connection. And also, chamber music is much more mobile because there's less people. And so, I've performed in a few prisons as a part of the Ensemble Connect at Carnegie Hall, and that we got to go and go through this massive security process and perform in prisons. And there's such a, I grew up in like the suburbs of Illinois, and there's like, I didn't know anything about an incarceration center, and so we basically went in, we played some tunes, and it turned it into a dialogue, and asked questions and I came out a different and better person because of that experience. And I would have, you can't take a symphony orchestra into a prison like that. And then we also got to talk to the inmates and feel this connection, and then feel it just like those experiences in particular. And then we also went to this program called AHRC, which is for a program for adults with alternative needs. And just like feeling the reaction, you can feel the energy in the room, even if you're looking at your music. It's just electric. And so I love that close connection that you can have, and that there's a lot more autonomy in the words that you choose to offer the audience. And then there's a lot more autonomy in the rehearsal process too. So the biggest thing for me is that you just get you get a stronger fingerprint on the overall artistic project, sonically, but also verbally. And, if we want to include other arts, there's just so much more of a personality that you can put out to the world. And I don't think classical music is dwindling. There's all these words that are said about it, but I think what audiences are missing is human connection, and chamber music does a great job of building that bridge, but I do think we can even do a better job. What about you, Juan?
Or real quick before, if I may, one of the things I love, because you mentioned Ensemble Connect, which is, a program through Carnegie Hall and the Juilliard School. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I participated in their Audience Engagement Institute through Ensemble Connect. And yes, Dick, you're learning about from the members of Ensemble Connect, but also through the music education wing of Carnegie Hall. And one of the most amazing things about that program and about Ensemble Connect is like trying to have IPs or interactive performances. And that's what we're being trained on. And also, it's kind of like you have this mixed bag of instrumentation because it's more about musicianship and artistry rather than like traditional groups instrumentation. So it's like, okay, cool. French horn, flute, bassoon, clarinet. Okay, cool. Oboe. Great. Yeah, you won't be in a woodwind quintet, by the way. Yeah, you're not. Even though that might be what you're used to. So you have to have flexible arrangements. You have to kind of create with what you have. And like as you were talking about Velvet, like you're kind of taking other talents and other personalities to add to a piece of music, but also the performance of said piece of music. So it's a really phenomenal program, and not just for where they're taking music, but what they're doing to musicians and chamber music and repertoire in general. Soapbox over. Juan.
No, this is all really great. I guess the thing that I enjoyed and continue to enjoy most about playing chamber music is that I feel like that's where I did my most musical growth, because even when you're in school and you have a regular coach every week, usually you don't get coached the way you would in a large ensemble, where the role of each musician is just a little bit different. But I feel like it's all the same. So like it's all chamber music to me because we're playing with other people. So to me, playing music with other people is what it's about, and chamber music just means there's less people. But to me, the process is the same. It's just the role is different. So as a horn player, I'm used to playing in mid to large size sections, 4 to 8 players, depending on what the piece is, and depending on where you sit in the section. Basically, the rule of thumb, unless you sit principal horn, you're not really making the calls for the section. So the role of the section player, the hierarchy of where you place your listening, starts at the horn section, and then it expands outward, maybe. In the principal horn chair, it's around you, so that you can guide, right? So in chamber music, as a horn player, especially when I'm the only one, that's my role all the time, is to listen around me constantly. So I love that. And actually learning and developing these skills, like the ability to catch on to the subtleties of whatever. Am I doubling the trumpet? Is it a unison? Is it an octave? How do I... And you have all these choices you make from your, from your chair, whether it's not a real chair or not, but that's meant to contribute to this musical product. And so, like, I don't know, for me, after spending, it's like you can almost tell when you deal, especially when you deal with young students, undergrads or whatever, but you can almost tell who has more experience playing chamber music sort of on their own and who doesn't, just based on the choices they make in the ensemble. And it's been fascinating for me being on the other side a little bit for at least 1 year. I've been working on a conducting degree at the UMKC Conservatory, and it's been really interesting being on the other side, because you also hear stuff that I'm like, man, if I were in the chair, is that what I sound like too, or is that the choice I would make? Or sometimes it's the opposite, where like, man, I remember when I'm in it, I hear this whatever, but on the other side it's like, wow, that translated differently, or this translated more, or this translated less. So it's been really fascinating that way. But to me, again, the chamber music experience gives you the chances to come to these realizations on your own without somebody necessarily telling you. And then it's up to you to do it all the time. So like for me, the biggest takeaway was it makes me feel so much more capable of coming into any ensemble setting and feel like I can fulfill my role properly, you know, and I feel like I can do it well just because I don't know. I treat it all like chamber music. Just the roles, the responsibilities of the role changed for me. That's all.
Yeah, the role in the chamber group is, a lot better, for you, because if you're in a large ensemble and the trumpet is sharp, you're like, maybe the conductor will say something. Or if you're in a large ensemble and the trumpet is sharp, you can say like, maybe the principal player will tell that principal player that they're sharp. But in Dallas Brass, you can just say, buddy.
Yeah, I just tell you you're sharp. Well, sometimes I consider that being a good friend, buddy.
Yes.
Good
friends tell other friends that they're sharp.
Yeah, why not?
I'll order that T-shirt.
Yeah. You've heard it here, only on Chamber Chats.
That's somewhat of an inside joke with obviously, but Buddy and I. Buddy, when did you come into the group? 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
So Buddy and I got a couple of seasons together in the Dallas Brass, and I have this thing which is it's more of a theory than anything, but a lot of my trumpet player friends have heard this. But I have a theory. I'll just share briefly with all of you and whoever's watching. I have a theory that every human being has a pitch center that they like click with, okay? And for some reason, I noticed that more people than not, myself included, hear and play a little bit above 440, above pitch center, right? But then there's another phenomenon that I notice with, I'll just say, many of my trumpet friends. I'll just keep it personal, right? The trumpet players that I know and I have worked with and played with. There's something about playing a little bit higher than everyone else that sounds right to the individual ears. So fine, I'm cool with it as long as we're all vibing in the same pitch center, because then otherwise things don't sound right, and we all know what that does. There's physics and science in it, and it, contrary to popular belief, it's not about me being right as it is about just the ensemble being out of tune. So if there's an instance and we have something in octaves or something, and like, let's use Buddy for example, be like, Buddy, did you pull out your slide for this one tune that we've played for the 50th time that we know you like to be sharp on? Oh yeah, I pulled out a little bit. But then here's where the phenomenon happens. I really believe the body, like the brain, tells you to go up. Because I know I struggle with this whenever I come down in pitch centers, like more than I'm used to, and I notice I still put the pitches where my brain hears them. So if I'm not consciously telling myself like, we're playing lower right now, we're just playing lower right now, and it's okay, it'll just happen and I won't notice. So that's my theory. It's that people who hear sharp, it sounds right to them, and unless they're right there, it'll actually sound wrong. Now I don't know if that's Buddy's case.
Well, I just know sometimes we'll be like in rehearsal and you'll be like, I think you're a little sharp there. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I'll pick up my horn and I'll touch my tuning slide and then I'll just stop. So yeah, I'll just touch it.
Yeah. And there were times where I'm just like, so are you going to move that slide or you're just going to leave it?
I'd rather not. Anyway, so we have a question from Facebook from a Biva friend, a former Fred Brass fellow. This is Mr. Armando Alicandu. He says and asks, small ensembles have an advantage right now because they may be able to rehearse while social distancing. How would you recommend a group try and find performance opportunities? With smaller audiences needing larger venues to distance, do you think this allows for more intimate concerts?
Who's going first?
Did you have something, Velvet, that you were going to say?
No, I said that's a great question. I mean, and it's a question that everyone's asking, even in academia right now. Of what are we going to do? Well, first and foremost, the performers need to be distanced. And then, of course, the audience members will need to be distanced as well. I think the intimacy from that could be that there aren't as many people, and those that are in the audience, they really want to be there, creating that intimacy of I'm thrilled to have live music. I think that's one of the things that will occur. I think that the chamber ensembles will need to be a little creative in their spacings, because there are guidelines, and there are guidelines. I mean, I'm reading different things from, and I'm sure everyone has read the different things, but it goes anywhere from brass needing to be 15 feet apart to, or no one can be in front of a trombone player for 9 feet. You have to be at least 9 feet away. And
that's good advice all year round.
Yeah. But I think it will create some intimacy, but even some of the larger halls aren't allowing people to come in, even with the let's say, for instance, a hall could actually have 75 socially distanced audience members. That's probably not going to happen for a while. But I think that some it's almost going to be like private settings. Even when we're talking about students that are going to have recitals, that only their parents and teacher and a couple of close friends will be able to attend. So in that way, there is an intimacy, because you're playing for lots of special people to the performer. So I'm not sure how. I'm very curious how we're gonna start all of the live concerts. I'm really curious about that.
Mm-hmm. I think when when looking at the word like intimate performance, and you think about like in the classroom, like an intimate classroom setting is, okay, I have 15 people in my class, so I know everyone's name and I know basically their personality, versus like 150 person math 101 class. So when we're talking about intimate performances now, at least like one thing that I'm thinking about is it's not so much the number, but it's the attention that the audience feels to the performer and that the performer feels to the audience, because we're both in a position that's just like, oh, it's you. Like, oh, look, a person that's like hearing me play, or like, look, someone who's playing for me. So I think it's kind of like what Gene was talking about before, where like you just have a little bit more of a connection to the audience. There's so much more potential there with that. Looks like everybody froze, at least on my screen. Okay, are we back? Okay, good. Woo. So yes, it's just the idea that there's a lot more acknowledgement and appreciation for each person involved in the performance, and the person involved in the performance is not just the person that's playing. So I think that is where we start really be thinking about intimate performances, not just, oh, this is a small venue here. But
Absolutely, I agree. Absolutely.
I also want to comment on that, you know, I think people feel like something's intimate when it feels personal. And so I think it's time in general, sans pandemic, to adjust how audiences exist in the space that you're in. And I wanted to do a recital before this all happened, and it was going to be like BYO blanket, or like bring your own yoga mat, BYO yo. And just, you know, it can be in a warehouse or a gymnasium or outdoors, but like I love going to Ravinia and Tanglewood and just kind of being able to be comfortable. And it's hard for me to really enjoy a beautiful piece of music if I feel tightly smashed into an airplane row. And so I think even if it's in a much larger space, having more ability for the audience to be as they are comfortable so that they can better engage with the music is maybe one thing But we'll see if that can even happen. And then also just more, we're going to have to keep exploring digital options until it really is safe to do so. I personally, I think we're going to be doing a lot of Gabrielli, maybe, with the space requirements. It's frankly, right now, to me, it seems unsafe to be sitting in a brass quintet in a classroom in the same close, U or flying V or whatever you do, as it stands, because it just doesn't, that's risky based on the data that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that's going to click for me, it's if I'm distance and we have masks and we're not playing, and it's okay, I feel good. And the first time someone goes, I'm what have we done here?
You run out of the room.
So yeah. And these performances that we're kind of talking about, it really makes the idea of music as a gift that much more real. And we say that this is about sharing, and at the same time it's well, this is also work, and this is also paying my bills and putting food on the table and stuff, but just that it is a gift.
Yeah.
I heard you. It is doing a rare thing here. It's a rare thing here in Arizona.
Buddy,
you're back.
We're getting a storm in Arizona, which means water, which is very rare. So of course it happens on the day of the first chamber chats. I blame Kenneth's birthday on the.
Oh, so you think is it the weather might be messing with
I think the weather. Mm-hmm.
Oh, dang-a-lang. Okay.
I would like to share this one performance space that was just really, really memorable. I was in Italy several years back, and there's a concert at the top of a mountain near a refuge in the Dolomites. However, everyone had to climb to that, had to hike. So it was about a 2-hour hike to the performance space. I did not hike with my tuba. They hired professional hikers to take up my instrument and I think some of their equipment. But so you're going all the way up, and there's just small refuge that was there that people would go and have something to drink and something to eat when they did arrive. And it's just sitting on a small ledge, very small concert space, and I don't know, probably 40, 50 people were there, but it was talk about intimacy in the space factor, which was also a wonderful thing. I remember I couldn't tap my foot, because if I did, I was going to be tapping my foot on a child that was sitting practically on my feet as we were all there. But the experience was just the wonderful hike and the nature and the exhilaration, and of course the exhaustion as well, of hiking up this mountain prior to playing, and then knowing that everyone else hiked up there to hear this particular concert. And then of course it was after the concert, then wonderful food just flowed everywhere. But I will remember that for a long time. And I'm not sure, I'm glad I made the choice to have a hiker take my tuba up.
It sounds like TA. Sounds like a job for a TA.
Oh, well, this person with the tuba on his back, I think he made it up there, and I was a little worried because we're not a musician, if they're gonna put my tuba on the valves, But the person took off, almost jogging up the mountain, and probably got there probably an hour before I did, walking. But just a great way of spending the day, for sure. I want to do that again. I've got to find that venue and do that again. It was just something.
Oh, go ahead, Jean.
I was saying I'll go with you, but I also
Okay.
I emailed North Face and a couple other of these athletic hiking brands, and I said, hey, I climb mountains, and I need a Trumpet case that is a legitimate backpack where I can go, I can go hiking and have my trumpet be a part of it. And they never wrote back. So what the heck? If you're listening, Trumpet case.
That's our main market, actually. Our hiking and mountainous apparel.
Yeah, come on, North
Employees.
Face.
That's who watches this. Juan, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was gonna say, I feel lucky to have had a similar experience to Velvet when I went to the Aspen Music Festival as a student. So part of the best part of being in a chamber music group at Aspen is you always get a chance to go play music on the mountain. And so now, if somebody wanted to hike the mountain and then go play, they could have. But this was when we got a free gondola ride to go up. So it was always cool. We would all get on the gondola in our dress clothes and go up and set up in our little stage or tent or whatever, and people hung out and sipped on wine or did whatever, and kids ran around, and we played a good show. It was also an opportunity for us to make a little money. So it was like a busking event basically. So I feel like all the students always look forward to that. And Aspen is just gloriously beautiful, and but it was always fun for me, because I got to let loose. My first summer at the Aspen Music Festival, I felt just so way in over my head because I was like this. I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh my gosh, I just hope I don't embarrass myself. But we went up there and it was like, well, who wants to talk to the audience? And I'm like, I'll do it. I had a little bit of experience working in the theme parks here, and I'm like, I'll entertain the crowd. It's fine. Finally, I can be a fool, and it's okay. So that was always really cool. No, totally. I think now is the time to. Well, we'll see. We have to wait and see what happens with everything regarding the virus or whatever. But yeah, we're gonna get opportunities to get out of our comfort zones and do some fun things.
Yeah,
it's an exciting time.
I think it's a good point where back to the intimacy feeling. Why don't we just do more concerts for less people and give audiences a different experience as far as concerts go? Even grocery stores are doing that. There's this Mariano's grocery store where I grew up, and they provide an experience. There's like a babysitter and a pianist and wine tasting, and we should give the user experience a little bit of a nudge, I think. And this is a time to kind of explore that if there are safe options.
I think musicians will benefit too. I mean, it'll give a lot of people, it'll put them more at the forefront where perhaps otherwise they wouldn't have been, especially students.
Yeah.
We're all going to have to be creative. And I think now the time being in a music school now is this is really good experience, I think, just to hey, everybody come up with your own chamber group, come up with your own 40-minute program, and you're going to go out and you're the show, as opposed to okay, we're going to play this orchestra concert and this large ensemble concert, and it's going to be interesting.
Maybe a final thought to kind of to leave is, we were born out of creativity, like I said before, and now we're doing it all again. We're the creative type of music, the creative genre of music, chamber music, both in its instrumentation and its repertoire and in its performance possibilities. So still giving the gift, but changing the outlet and being really creative with that. I want to thank our BIVA faculty, Jean and Juan, for coming on here today, and especially to our distinguished guest, Velvet Brown. Thank you so much for being on the very first episode of Chamber Chats here on the BIVA broadcasts.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. We do have one other order of business, but before I get to that, make sure you tune in tomorrow to episode 12 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to be doing a talk and hang with Andrew Hitz, J.D. Shaw, and Lance LeDuc. That should be hopefully a good time with everything, but it is a recipe for something. But
for buddy roasting.
Oh, yeah, as if I don't get enough of that on the road. But anyway, if you have seen any of the other BIVA broadcasts, you might be familiar with how we do our sign-offs. If not, I will inform you that we like to have everybody on the call give their best mouth trumpet, or maybe mouth horn or mouth tuba impression. So just a very standard one might go like this. So Juan has seen an episode before, so maybe once he collects himself, Juan, if you could give us your best mouth trumpet.
Oh my goodness. I forgot to practice this ahead of time. How do you even do it?
Got to be creative. We're the creative genre. Juan, you can do it.
So you just go. Like I can't even. That's the best I got.
Why am I not surprised that a horn player cracked while doing that? Okay.
That's good.
Gee.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, mine comes with a 1-sentence or maybe 2-sentence story. My boyfriend is an astrophysicist / small particle physicist, and on our first date, I asked him what he did. He told me that. I was like, oh, and then he was like, well, what do you do? And I go.
And there was a second date?
Now we live together.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow, that is so great. Velvet.
Okay, trumpet.
That's pretty darn good. Wow, wonderful. Thank you for your efforts.
Not fair.
Juan, we'll give you another try some other episode. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in for tuning into the Biva broadcasts. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Fredericksburg Brass and Tidewater Brass as well. And Velvet, if people still want to, get in touch with you or learn more about what you do as a musician and a chamber musician, how should they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me through my email, vmb10@psu.edu.
Excellent. Thank you guys for tuning into Biva Broadcasts, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you to Velvet Brown for joining Biva faculty Buddy Deshler, Juan Berrios, and Jean Laurenz today for our first installment of Chamber Chats. If you would like your product or school to be featured on our broadcast, please reach out to Dakota Corbliss, Director of Operations at dakota@fredbrass.com, and we'll be sure to set it up. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time.